One historic day in the Middle East. Hostages, all hostages, released from Gaza. Two, California Governor Gavin Newsom's set, now ready to give reparations in the Golden State, a state that never had slaves. The descendants of people that were never slaves will be paid by people who never had slaves. We're going to break it down with former Oklahoma Sooner wide receiver, political and social commentator, Jeffery Mead. Three, former NFL kicker Jay Feely is running for Congress in Arizona. We're going to talk to him about his run for Congress, media malpractice, and what it's like to kick a game winner in the NFL. It is Will Cain Country on a historic Monday. For the first time in generations, for the first time in decades, the prospect of peace in the Middle East, the prospect of peace between Palestinians and Israel. President Trump suggests this could be the golden age of the Middle East.
Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change, and change very much for the better. Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East. It's going to work together.
Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Middle Eastern countries partnering now with the United States of America and Israel to try to put in place a plan that will preserve, with some sense of permanency, peace in the Middle East. In the meantime, for the first time in 2 years, there are no hostages in Gaza. Let's get into that with story number one. Today, as of this morning, incredible videos as families have been reunited with their family members held hostage in Gaza for the past 2 years. They are images that speak for themselves. They are sounds that speak for themselves. Let's take a minute and just appreciate a couple of these moments. Here are some of the families being reunited with each other after being held hostage in Gaza.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. לשמחה.
Truly incredible. Can you only imagine? Can you put yourself in first person? I think long ago you would have had to give up. I think I would have been tempted to give up. Hope. How could you imagine, as you saw the videos from October 7th, or you heard the stories of what was happening inside of Gaza, how could you have retained hope? And yet, they did. And yet, these families did. Here, watch again. Here's a couple of more reunification videos that are absolutely incredible.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. חיים שלי אתה, חיים שלי.
Truly is something to behold. It truly is real, very beautiful human emotion. Going to have an ongoing conversation today. We're going to be joined by social and political commentator, former Oklahoma Sooner wide receiver Jeffery Mead. We're also going to be joined, as we are right now as he sits down at the table, by former NFL kicker Jay Feely, who's running for Congress from Arizona. Jay, what's up?
How are you? It's great to be here.
It's good to have you. We're going to spend a little bit more time later in the program talking about your run for Congress and your career as an NFL kicker, but I just wanted to bring you into a conversation about what we're seeing this moment here in the Middle East.
What breaks my heart is that it took so long. You see the families with their children and the hugs, and you just think the 2 years that they sat there waiting hoping that this day would come, probably thinking that it would never come, that they wouldn't get their loved ones back. And, I'm just thankful that we had a president who was strong and believed in peace through strength. And I think if President Trump wasn't the president, if it was a President Harris, I don't know if this day ever comes.
You told me a few years ago you made a trip to the Middle East. You went to see Israel. You saw, I believe, as well, Gaza.
We went all over. We started in Poland. We brought 100 Ukrainian Jewish refugees that were moving to Israel to live. That was pretty special to be a part of that, and heartbreaking at the same time. And then we went all around. We went to see the Gaza Strip. We went to the West Bank. We went up to the Syrian border. And you just saw how small really Israel was and how they're surrounded by countries that want to see their destruction and want to see the end of the Israel people, the Jewish people. And, for me, it brought it home. I mean, one, it was the most incredible spiritual experience because my faith came to life. I walked where Jesus walked. And so for me, it was such an emotional time. But also, when October 7th happened and some of the people that we were with and the villages that we were with were kidnapped or killed, I was just heartbroken. And to me, I couldn't understand how some of the response in America from so many was, to side with the Palestinian people and to side with the terrorists and in any way to support that. It just was mind-boggling to me.
What do you make of the role President Trump, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner did in bringing something together that looked like it's defied presidencies, it's eluded presidencies for more than half a century?
I believe that's his 8th conflict that he's been a part of solving since he became president less than a year ago. It's amazing what he's done. I saw the paper this morning in Jerusalem, calling him, the peaceful president. And, it's just amazing what he's been able to accomplish. And, so many still, they called him Hitler. They said he was going to bring on World War III. They said he was the end of democracy. And all he's done is solve conflicts throughout some of the most difficult places in the world to solve conflicts.
It is truly incredible. Walking in the studio now as well as Jeffery Mead, social and political commentator, former Oklahoma Sooner. Jeffrey, what's up? Nice to meet you in person, man. This is Jay Feely.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Mead.
Nice to meet you, man.
Good to meet you.
Glad to introduce you guys together. First of all, you are about 6'4", 6'5", right?
Yeah, you 6'5".
Okay,
Let's get it
all
right.
right.
Let's get it right.
I've doubted Jeffrey's height from time to time, but this is the first time we've met in person, and it's true. Glad to introduce you to Jay. You remember Jay from kicking in the NFL for...
No Michigan helmet up here, though. I'm a little, his Sooners took care of my Wolverines earlier this year.
How long were you in the NFL?
14 years.
14 years. Jeffrey played wide receiver for Oklahoma, so we have to take a moment today and just give condolences to him. He was very confident was it Thursday?
Thursday, I think we talked. That's correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. And you weren't very confident
I wasn't.
when we talked.
Just,
no, you
what is
weren't.
that? There's got to be a life lesson in there somewhere.
There is. There is. Y'all played better. Y'all won in every aspect of the game, so got to give it to you.
I was there. It was a lot of fun. I wanted to bring you guys in, but I'm going to talk to each of you separately. We have some topics that I want to talk to you about and some topics I want to talk to Jay about, but it's such an incredible day right now in what's happening in the Middle East, and it doesn't really matter in my mind whether or not you were someone who looked at the war over the last couple of years and thought that there was atrocities on both sides or whether or not you thought there was a good guy and a bad guy. This should be a moment that's celebrated by everybody. I mean, this is peace, and it might be permanent peace, which is just an incredible accomplishment by President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it's interesting to see a lot of people not wanting to necessarily give him credit, and they were going on and on telling us he's going to be the president of war, but we've actually seen essentially the exact opposite of that ever since he's gotten into office. So I think there are a lot of reasons for people on every side to celebrate, and I think that's something that we should be doing, and also giving credit where it's due.
What do you think, Jeffrey, of the people? There are some who are declining to celebrate this ceasefire, and it's interesting. Some of the same people who have been asking for a ceasefire for well over 2 years, saying that Israel needs to draw back, Israel needs to stop. I don't know. Have we heard from Ilhan Omar? Have we heard from? I
checked AOC's Twitter
and
nothing.
Nothing.
So many of the squad, nothing. And that tells you everything, the hypocrisy that exists, that they can't bring themselves to say, hey, this was a good job. Our president did a good job.
What does it tell you? Why can't they do that?
Well, they just hate President Trump. Everything they do is anti-President Trump, and that's their whole platform right now. Their answer to losing the election has been to move further left and to push back against everything that this administration does, even if it's to the benefit of not only the American people, but now, people that are at war.
It tells me something else about the sincerity of their motivations over the last 2 years. I mean, were you really interested in preserving the lives of Palestinians? If you can't sit here today and say, hey, look, today is a massive step forward, right? This is a ceasefire. And if that's not to be celebrated, then what was it you actually wanted to happen in the Middle East?
I don't know if they really cared about what's happening in the Middle East because there are Christians being, murdered in Africa. They're not talking about that, right? So I think a big part of it is they want to have something righteous that they can come around together and make themselves feel virtuous about. They feel like they're fighting for a cause. Because if they truly care about what was happening...
But what is that cause? It's not the preservation of life.
No, it's them feeling good about themselves, right? So, if the best way to put this would be they're saying, hey, we're going to appear virtuous to everybody out there. And in that virtue and the fact that we're showing virtue, this is going to make us feel like we're fighting for something. And I think that's what they're doing. It's not really about those people. It's really about themselves, but they're not going to say that.
I would argue it's really about power, too, Will. They want to make sure that they win the House back in 2026 in the midterms. And everything they're doing is predicated on how do we win the House back. So any win that they give President Trump, any time that they say he did a good job, they feel like they're moving away from their ability to garner back the House and to be able to have power. And we know what will happen if they win the House in the midterms. They'll impeach again. They'll delay. They'll try to do everything so this administration can't accomplish anything in those 2 years and try to get to, the next presidential election and try to win back the House and the Senate.
I almost feel like we're talking about two different theys. I feel like when you're talking, Jay, you're talking about a lot of the people who are politicians, who are running for office, who are vying for power. I'm also interested in the they, I think what you're referencing, Jeffrey, which is the kids we've seen on college campuses for the last 2 years.
Correct. I think you're 100% right. Both of the things we're talking about are accurate, but I think there are a lot of people on college campuses, a lot of Democrats that aren't actually in power who are virtue signaling, essentially.
Yeah.
And they want to make themselves feel good, and they want to feel like they're behind a cause. But in reality, a bunch of them are just being useful idiots for terrorists and actually spreading and legitimizing terrorism as a way of doing things. And I think it's actually quite dangerous.
Yeah, and in that way, peace is a disruption to their cause and a disruption to their self-identity that they've developed. You bring up the Christians in Nigeria. I've done that on the Will Cain show, and it's incredible how much traction that gets, meaning on social media, because people don't hear about it.
Sure.
And then you have to ask yourself why. And I think that there's two answers. One, it's because the victims, I think honestly, are black Africans, and that just doesn't get the attention. I don't know why, honestly, that doesn't get the attention that in the telling of the college campus liberal, the victim is the Palestinian, right? So why is that a more sympathetic person than a black Christian in Nigeria? But I think the second part is it doesn't give you the right bad guy, right? The people killing black Christians in Nigeria are black Muslims in Nigeria.
Correct.
And I don't know that I don't want to lead to everything being anti-Semitic and everything is about Israel, but Israel provides the convenient bad guy to them.
Yes, they do. And I think, again, and I also, for whatever reason, people have no problem critiquing or criticizing Christianity, but when it comes to criticizing Islam, they're hesitant to do it. And I'm not really sure why that is, but maybe they see it as a power structure, just like white people, for example. They say black people can't be racist because they don't have the power structure. Well, they might argue that Christians have the power structure here, so we're going to criticize the crap out of them. But since Muslims don't have the power structure, they're beyond criticism.
But that wouldn't be the case in Nigeria. Right? So they're superimposing the power structures of America onto Africa.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Which is pretty wild. I asked Jay this, what do you think? I mean, look, I try to check myself always. Have my job is not to be the president's cheerleader. I don't believe that to be the case, but my job is also to tell the truth where I see it. And I think we're looking at the most consequential. I say this privately. I said it at a high school football game on Friday night. We're looking at the most consequential presidency of a century. I think you can literally go back. Yeah, 1920s at the least, and I'm just randomly drawing that number because I think you could go back even further. And I don't think I needed this moment for it to be the case for Donald Trump, but now I think it almost becomes undeniable. How do you deny the success and power of this presidency?
I think I don't think you do. I think you just have to be realistic. And if you are realistic and you don't have Trump derangement syndrome, when I say that, meaning going to oppose him no matter what, you can see that there has been a massive effect as a result of the things that he's been doing and as a result of his presidency. So I think if you're just being honest about it, you can say, yes, this is a very, very consequential president, and we're not even a year into his term.
No, right. So, Jay, you've been over there. I think there's also a healthy level of skepticism about whether or not this peace holds. I think that the parties on the other side, look, Hamas is not a party that, to the extent that it is a party, should ever be trusted. It's incinerated that
terrorist
trust.
organization.
Right. So the question is those other powers involved in the play, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, whether or not they can impose their will on Hamas and have some say, along with Israel and the United States, that makes it different this time.
Well, they certainly can because they're the ones that fund Hamas. You know, and so if you look at Iran or Qatar, whoever's funding them, if you don't fund them, then they're not going to have the ability to be in that leadership position that they're in. I think the people there, you know, want peace, and they don't want to be used as pawns that Hamas does. You know, you go back to Bill Clinton talking about in 2000 that there was an offer for a Palestinian state that they turned down and they didn't want. You know, and they were going to be allowed to have basically the entire West Bank, and they turned that down. Because they wanted to be able to resist Israel, and they want the destruction of Israel. And I think when that is at the core of your beliefs, I think long term, yeah, you're right to be wondering if this deal will hold. But you know, anything that got all of the hostages back and was able to create peace, even if it's for just this moment in time, and you know, who knows how long it lasts. I think that's a wonderful thing. You know, and I also think that you're right when you were talking about Nigeria and the same thing in Haiti. You know, these gangs are going through Haiti and killing Christians at will down there. You know, it's a failed state. And really no one talks about that either. They're going through, they're raping, killing with no consequence, and there's no leadership there, but no one talks about that.
Isn't it interesting what we choose to care about? I mean, you brought up Haiti, and my mind went, what about the black-on-black deaths in Chicago? That doesn't matter, right? Correct. It doesn't matter until it's a white cop, right? So where you choose to, I don't know, extend your empathy or extend your care or extend your virtue signaling or extend the thing you're using as your cause is very revealing.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like until you're willing to do something personally, don't tell me about all the virtue signaling, the things that you care about, the causes that you care about. Until you're willing, and I think about this all the time with Democrat politicians, like until you're willing to bring somebody into your home, to your own home, then don't tell me about how much you care about illegals or you care about, you know, people oppressed all over. Until you're willing to spend your own money and go there and get engaged in the process, then don't tell me about all the things you're going to do. I think about that when people are going to run for office. Don't tell me about all the things you're going to do in office when you get there. Show me what you did in your life leading up to you running. That'll tell me what you're going to be like as a politician.
So I'm going to talk to both of you separately, but then this popped into my head as something I want to talk to you about together. So when you said Bill Clinton, my mind jumped to Bill Parcells. And here's why. So I just read this about you, Jay. So, and tell me if it's true because it's Wikipedia. One of your best professional seasons was with the Dolphins.
My best.
Right? Your best. Okay. Yeah. Your best.
I led the league that year.
Right. And yet you didn't come back. And what Wikipedia suggests is because Bill Parcells, who was not the coach, but I think he was the general manager.
He was like the president overseeing everything.
Didn't like how outspoken you were.
He didn't like that I did TV and radio. He didn't like that I was a captain on the team, that I was the player rep as well. I had to hold them accountable. I do remember a meeting where the new head coach brought me in and said, you know, we want you to kick and go stand in a corner and not say anything. And my mentality was, you know what, if that's what you want, like I'll do that right now. And, you know, I spent 5 months in the off season just lifting as hard as I could, working as hard as I could, not doing anything media-wise, and it didn't matter. They still cut me, you know, when it came to August. Because
if you were playing by the rules at that point, then why?
They knew probably, you know, like as the player rep, I was going to hold them accountable to the rules, and that I was going to continue to speak out at some point if I saw something that wasn't right.
What were you speaking out on at the time?
Oh, you know, anything, politics. You know, I mean, I had a radio show. I would go on Fox News. I would go on Hannity's show. They just didn't like that, especially coming from the kicking position. They wanted it. There was a new regime. They wanted a new atmosphere there, and that was their right. And you know, God has a plan and a desire for your life, and sometimes it's not exactly the way you want it to go. And if you believe in Him and you trusted Him, you know, you'll wait and you'll see. And those doors opened up. I ended up with the Jets, and we did great. We went to AFC Championship, and and then brought me out to Arizona after that. But it's fun to kind of watch that process and to look back and to see how God was opening and closing doors along the way.
All right, so here's why I wanted to bring that up with both of you guys here together on set. So, Jeffrey, I can't remember the name of the sports writer at Fox Sports who I had on immediately after you. It wasn't the last time you were on, a couple of times before.
I know who you're talking about.
He's from Oklahoma.
Yes. It'll come to me, but I know who you're talking
R.J. Young.
Yep, that's it.
And R.J. knew you. He knew you in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was listening when you were on, and he said, on air, he goes, Jeffrey was always a serious dude. Like, you could always tell. When you went into his home in high school, you could tell this guy's different. This guy has thoughts and ideas about his own career and his own life and what he wants to do, just different than a lot of high school and, for that matter, college football players.
Sure.
I'm curious, is this all? I know that you hit my radar post college football.
Okay.
Did this start during college football? Speaking out, developing these thoughts, maybe even in the locker room. Like, were you doing this?
No. No. Not at all. Really, it started after college. We talked about it, kind of with George Floyd. That's kind of where it all started. So before that, I wasn't really paying much attention. A lot of my family is Democrats. I was dating a girl at the time who was a conservative. Her family was conservative. So I would play devil's advocate, and I would piss off my family, and I would piss her off.
Okay.
Right? So we would be talking, and I would want to know. I would say, what's this? What's that? Why do you think this? Why do you think that? But I didn't really have my opinions formed yet. I was just gathering data, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I didn't really start formulating my opinions till I got out of college, probably a year before I started making content.
Right. Because I'm always curious how that plays in the locker room, you know? And it's interesting, Jay, with you, like, there's all kinds of different, what is the word I'm going to look for here? Discrimination. And you had kicker discrimination. Because no, but it's true. Like, I'll put up with that from a receiver. I'm not putting up with that from a kicker.
So here's the interesting thing. Jeffrey, I think you would probably say the same thing. But what was special about being in a college football locker room or an NFL locker room, the most special thing for me was that it broke down racial and economic barriers that a lot of time exist in society and allow you to have relationships and to learn things that you would never learn otherwise. You're in these locker rooms, you develop friendships with guys that you never would have come in contact with. And because your identity, your primary identity is you're an Oklahoma football player or a Michigan football player, not a black football player or a white football player, it allowed you to have a lot of those relationships and those conversations that you could never have in any other, societal setting. And for me, like, I roomed in the in training camp with LeVar Arrington and Brandon Short one year, two of the, baddest linebackers from Penn State. And to have those opportunities to hear about their life and their upbringing and how that formulated their beliefs and their thoughts and their political beliefs gave me insight into why they believed what they believed. I think those are a lot of the conversations that we just don't have now because we segregate into, like-minded, thoughtful people that have the same beliefs as us or come from the same backgrounds that we come from. And you never have those conversations and learn from people. And I think that's where real growth comes from.
Sure. I think that's true. I mean, when I was in college, we weren't never talking about politics. There were some black guys that thought I was stuck up, but that was really it, or too good or uppity. But that was never really, there was never really, hey, you're this, you're that. It was just, we got a job to do. We go to work out. We go practice. We go watch film. And we do that over and over again. And that was really it. Like, there was no talk about politics, nor we'll talk about where you came from. Like you said, it was just simply, we've got a job to do. We're on the same team. Let's go get it done.
I spent 5 years at ESPN, and in some ways, not exactly, and what would I know? I was never in a college or pro football locker room, but there's something about sports in general. So, like, even behind the scenes at ESPN, when we were hanging out, it was like dudes hanging out, like black dudes, white dudes,
yep,
talking about sports. And I think that what you guys were part of, and I think the military is like this too to some extent, is that when you take all of our superficial differences and then they are subjugated to a common mission, that's when you really get something special going, right? Like, we look different, maybe or maybe not, but we grew up different, maybe different socioeconomics. I'm using the royal we at some point here, all these different things. But now we're here, and we're here working towards this common thing. And by the way, I think the liberal, even female mindset doesn't get this, is that it's not that therefore we all think we're the same and therefore it's total kumbaya. It actually is more liberating than that. Then you can make fun of each other about your differences. Then you can own it, and but it doesn't matter because we're moving towards this common goal. And I've often said the country should think more like a locker room.
I would agree with that. I think that's a good way to put it.
We just need a common mission.
Sure.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And you think back to some of those critical moments like 9/11. We did come together. There was a common mission, and we did put a lot of our political differences aside because we had a common enemy, and it hit us at home. And it lasted that way for a little while, until everything starts to go back to normal, and then we segregate back into our common areas. And
You know what they say the best
common
thing
thought.
for humanity would be, right? A gigantic spaceship showing up over. All of a sudden, we'd be unified.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right.
That's right.
That is a good way to put it. It makes sense.
All right, I'm going to talk to Jay a little more about why he's running for Congress. I have some questions as a kicker dad. I've got some questions about kicking, and we'll hit a few topics. We'll hit a few topics in the news cycle as well. We're going to hang out with Jeffrey next. We're going to talk about Gavin Newsom looking for reparations in California. Let's get to all that with story number 2 when we come back on Will Cain Country. All right, live, coming down from Tulsa to Dallas, Texas, Jeffery Mead, social and political commentator, who walked right in and said, what? Huh? Go ahead, and you can use the language you want to use.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You were talking a lot of shit about my height.
Well, I was just doubting it. It's easy over Zoom to say you're 6'5", 6'7", 7'2", whatever.
What does the person say?
In person says you're right, 6'5". Now, I don't know about that. What'd you say? You bench 420?
I didn't know. Don't lie. Don't lie. No. We will go low 3s, high 2s.
Right now, low 3s.
I would say comfortably high 2s, possibly low 3s. I recently strained my AC joint, so I don't want to say.
You're lean, and you got stick those arms out. Look at that. You got to move that weight a long way.
I do. 275, not a problem. Go ahead.
Were you the strongest receiver in the receiver room?
No.
No?
When I was in college, I was weak.
Oh, this is post-college strength.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
What did you go to college? How tall were you freshman year?
6'5".
And what'd you weigh?
180.
Really?
Yes, sir.
That's really skinny.
Yeah, I was.
What'd you run the 40?
4'5".
4'5".
Probably like a mid 4'5".
Jay's over there. Jay Phillip. My kid's a kicker. He's 6'5".
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 160? I think. Yeah.
How old? What grade?
Senior. 17.
Oh, wow. He's worse than me. He's real skinny.
It's hard to put muscle on at 6'5".
Very hard.
Especially when it's happening to you.
Yes.
Like you're stretching things out every night you go to bed.
Yes.
When did you hit your? I'm gonna get to California and Gavin Newsom and reparations in just a minute. But this is the first time I've ever met Jeffery Mead in person. He's been on both shows. By the way, Jeffrey and Jay are both gonna be on the Will Cain show a little bit later today. First time I've met him in person. When did you hit your growth spurt?
I didn't have one. I was 6 foot in 6th grade.
6 foot in 6th grade.
Yeah.
So then it was just kind of an inch a year type thing.
Correct.
Kept going. What about basketball?
I had offers. If I'm thinking about it, it's, in my opinion, easier to go professional in football than it is basketball. I'm 6'5", had a 36 vertical, but that's more average in the NBA. If you look at the NFL, you don't have a lot of 6'5" receivers with 35, 36 in vertical.
So you were doing this calculation in high school?
Correct.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, RJ Young, the Fox Sports writer, said you were always a serious dude. It's like through the recruiting process, through everything. What does that mean? You were just thinking about your career. You weren't thinking necessarily, hey, who's got the hottest girls and where I'm going to have the biggest parties?
No. By the way, tip for the guys. If you work hard, you become valuable, the woman will come. Second off, no, I wasn't thinking that. I was more thinking about how do I make money is what I was thinking about. I want to have the resources to be able to do what I want to do when I'm older, and I don't want a lack of resources to harm me or my family or, me not be able to take care of my people because I have a lack of resources. So from the age of about 16 to 17, I was thinking, how do I make money? How do I invest? How do I create an income stream that can protect me and my family?
Were you always thinking beyond football? Because you just said to me you were thinking which one is the easier to go pro in, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that the trap a lot of young athletes fall into is that becomes their income stream. Like, I'm going to be a pro athlete. And even from being a receiver at Oklahoma, your chances, the percentages are still tiny, right?
Yes.
So you weren't locked into that path as a way to make a career.
No. I just saw it as a stepping stone. I essentially said I'll make a lot of money doing that, and then from there I can use that income to put it into assets that will create me revenue streams in perpetuity, essentially, just long-term income streams.
So you went in early thinking, I'm using this, it's not using me.
Correct. I still wanted to
football.
go. Yeah. I wanted to play, but it wasn't like I have to, it wasn't like that. It was more like I realized that this is a tool. I need to use it. It's not going to last forever, right? It's something that'll be fun. I can affect a lot of lives, do a lot of good, but I need to come out of the end with something, or come out of it with something in the end where I'm not coming out of it broke, essentially, like a lot of athletes do.
Okay, one more question on that. Do you think the fact that you had a plan B, essentially, made plan A less likely? So in other words, a lot of guys who make it say they were 100% committed. Now, 100 means there's no 2% devoted to plan B. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I didn't make it in that way. So all I'm doing is repeating cliches that guys say. You know, guys that make it, some don't. Do you think the fact that you were thinking about other ways to make a living or to make a life in any way took away from your ability to reach your potential in football?
I think if I'm being very technical, I would say sure, there might be a small percentage. I wouldn't say a lot because I did everything I was supposed to do. I was putting in extra time, made all my grades, was doing everything I was supposed to do, right? So I guess you could say yes to a degree, but I don't know if it would have been big enough to actually make a difference unless I transferred, possibly.
Transfer to another school?
Correct.
Why, just get more playing time?
Yeah, likely. I think the primary reason I didn't go would just be film. There wasn't enough film for scouts to be like, hey, let's go get that guy. Probably.
Yeah. Sorry about your loss this weekend at Oklahoma.
It happens, man.
Dominated by a better defense.
A better offense and special teams, and as well, play calling.
I love the graciousness. So does Ed. Yeah, I thought I would tweak him a little bit and get something, and he just gave it to me the way it was, the truth.
I'm honest.
Okay. What do you think about this? Let's move into some of the stuff on the news. So Gavin Newsom, who's clearly, I think, running for president, governor of California, has pushed forward and approved a slavery reparations agency in California. Now, we have talked at various times about, like, literally mathematically, how is this going to work? Sure. How can they afford it? How are you going to identify people eligible for reparations? Yeah. It all defies any sense of logic.
Sure.
But it also should be pointed out, California never had slaves.
Correct.
Now, I know people migrate, so I mean, that's legit. But, you know, in theory, Californians were never slaves and Californians never owned slaves. So that means, again, in theory, that you're paying people who never owned slaves, or people who are the ancestors of people that never owned slaves are paying something to the ancestors of people who never were slaves.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a waste of time, energy, and resources. Like, why are we have a bunch of things we could be focused on that are more productive than that? And a lot of it, and I think it was 2021, Black Americans had more spending power in 2021 than ever in the history of our existence. And in that time, we decreased our net worth. We got more money, and we decreased our net worth. So if you're giving out reparations and we're talking about cash, what is that going to do? Unless people have an idea of how to handle that money and know what to do with it, they're likely going to end up worse off than they were to begin with. So it's not really about being productive, because if it was, they'd be talking about, okay, teaching people the things they need to know with money so they can actually be productive with it. Instead, it's more so virtue signaling, in my opinion, and doing something that's not really productive.
It's also just, how are they're going to have an advisory board, a panel. This is how they're going to do it.
Okay.
And I bet it's going to be very gross. Like, who gets it and who doesn't? You know? Who's the famous commentator that she's black and she did one of those 23andMe's or DNA, and she did it on TV, or maybe there's a PBS TV show, and she found out that her family owned slaves? So does she pay herself? Does she receive, or does she pay?
That's a good question. Maybe it's both, and then it just cancels out. So she doesn't get anything.
Right. And look, there's one thing that I've lived with my entire life as one of the big principles, and it's the principle of agency. And agency is incredibly empowering.
Yes.
When you start realizing, honestly, the ability to take blame, like assume blame, assume responsibility, it empowers you to then correct things and do things. And I can think of nothing more victimizing and robbing people of agency than something like this. Like, you are taking from people according to something that happened that had nothing to do with their agency, and giving to people by virtue of something that had nothing to do with their agency.
Correct. And I think it also, it takes away from that. And with agency, I talk about accountability and decision making, and I literally tell people in the videos and stuff I talk about, I'm like, your life is nothing but an accumulation of the decisions you've made up until this point. So if you stack good decision on top of good decision on top of good decision, you're going to get a good result. But I think talking about reparations and giving people free money for stuff they never went through actually works against that aspect. And you're not actually telling people and showing them, hey, you need to be accountable for what you're doing. Because once you do have that agency and you take accountability, call it, there's a book, by Jocko Willink.
Extreme
Ownership. Thank you.
Extreme ownership.
Yes. That's what I think. I think if people adopt that, you actually do empower yourself to make better decisions, and you will continue to make better decisions because you will be accountable to yourself compared to blaming it on the white man, history, the system. Everything is your fault, so therefore you got to make something right. If everything's your fault, you're going to look at making things correct because it's on you, not something else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Victimhood is a cancer, and it eats you alive. It can absolutely kill your ability to make a change in your own life.
100%. I think it does. I think that's the biggest reason at this point. I think that's the biggest reason Black Americans as a whole struggle, not because of history. I think that played a part in it, and mentalities have carried over from that, and they haven't actually adapted to where the world is today. So many Black Americans are operating with software that's outdated, for a lack of a better term, if that makes sense. They're still operating in 50 years ago thinking when we're now in 2025, and that actually has them behind the rest of the other races and how they're doing things because they're viewing it from an outdated lens.
Okay, I want to ask you, Jeffrey's a very popular social and political commentator on TikTok, Instagram, and X, and I want to go through some things that are in the news with you, but now you've opened a conversation that I find fascinating. So that mindset, which you just described, is very popular, though. It is the predominant mindset culturally driving decision-making, at least on a macro level. I can't speak to personal level, but a macro level.
Sure.
In Black America. It's very popular. Why?
It's convenient, for one. And I think, again, it comes down to in a lot of Black communities, you listen to your elders and you don't question and you do what you're told, right? And that's good for the concept of respect, but a lot of older Black Americans dealt with things that younger Black Americans don't deal with anymore. So if you think about that, they have racial experiences that they've internalized and that they're still hanging on to, and they project that onto the younger generation. The younger generation then internalizes that and believes that, and they operate from that belief system when it's no longer relevant, I guess is the best way to put it.
That's a good word. I was curious what word you're going to choose because, I used to have these conversations on ESPN, and the one thing that, and I'm sure your answer to me is going to be yes, like you've dealt with racism in your life. Somewhere, somehow, sometime. Yes?
Yes.
But to hear you describe it, that's not relevant. Would that how you describe the fact that that's been a part of your life? Like, no, it's a mistake to say that the United States of 2025 is the same as the United States of 1950. Okay?
100%.
It's not even close.
No.
The mindset, the popular culture, the way people interact.
Nothing.
But you can't take that so far as to say racism doesn't exist.
Correct.
And so the difference in these two, the delta in these two experiences, I hear you described as a reduction in relevance to one's life.
Yes. Like, yeah, there are things racist. I've had racist experiences, high school, after, but it's not enough to where I can say it's actively affecting my life unless I give it the power to do that.
Right.
So, yeah, like at one point was dating a girl. Parents were like, hey, can't date because you're Black. White girl.
Right.
Okay, whatever.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Move on, whatever. Right. So, yeah, I think, again, we're putting too much energy towards being a victim and past ideologies that are outdated compared to saying, hey, I can go do this, I can go do that. Because there's nothing holding you. I can go do anything you can go do. Nothing holding me back. There's no law stopping me from doing it. But instead of taking that and saying, hey, we're going to go out here and do something, we're still hanging on. Because, again, if you're a victim, you don't have to take accountability for the fact that you're choosing to play 2K for 4 hours. You don't have to take accountability for the fact that you're not working out. You can say, I'm fat because I'm racist. Because the system's racist and it's putting extra stress on me and all these things.
Right. So
it is a good way for people not to take accountability. But, again, I think it goes back to older people internalizing what happened to them in the past. Go ahead.
I'm just curious. Don't ever let me interrupt you when I'm doing that. I told a friend of this the other day. I said, I got this guy, Jeffery Mead, that comes on my show. And I've been doing this for so long that I can listen and think at the same time.
Okay.
Meaning, like, I do think one of the things that sets me apart is I listen. Like, okay. I'm listening with shit. But I have the ability to listen and think, I want to go here next.
Okay.
Filing things.
Sure.
You are the hardest guy I've ever interviewed to predict. Like, you can almost get people's rhythms of when they're going to stop talking. And so if I'm slightly thinking about what I might think about with you, I'm like, oh shit, he just stopped talking. I can't predict when you land your plane. Your plane drops in like an osprey. Sometimes like it doesn't have a runway, and like you just drop it onto the runway. You land the plane, but I'm like, oh my God, it's my turn. So don't let me interrupt you ever.
No worries.
Now I don't even remember what I was going to say. Damn it.
Was it a question about the older generation, how they think, about younger generations with accountability? Was it about the culture of the U.S. as a whole and how it treats black people? Anything like that?
Yeah, but that's so big, Jeffrey. So big. It'll come back. I'll trigger it. In the meantime, let's do this. Okay, I have a couple of things I want to hit with you. Dan Rather. Are you too young to remember Dan Rather?
No.
Oh, I know. I was going to ask you.
What?
You said you didn't get political until after college. Mm-hmm. I'm curious who influenced you.
First person I would say influenced me was probably, where I can think of, was Ben Shapiro in a pencil factory video, kind of debating capitalism versus like socialism or communism.
But the thing about how you make a pencil?
Yeah, and the eraser and the gunk and all that.
That's Milton Friedman.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't give Ben that. Ben's brilliance, but that's a Milton Friedman thing. Like, no single one person has the expertise to build a pencil.
Sure.
That what it was?
Kind of.
It's the accumulation of human knowledge. The tin or the aluminum that holds the eraser on, the person that makes the eraser, the wood, the lead. That's all different human expertise developed over time. Everyone being good. No one person had the ability to go from nothing.
But it was more of who deserves the value that's created after everything is done. The capitalist who took all the risks to get the machinery and everything, or the employee who is there because they can stick a piece of graphite in a piece of wood. Like, that's kind of what he was talking about. Like, like everyone should get it. And he's like, no, the people who took all the risk up front should get the majority of the profit.
Right.
I think is what it was.
Thomas Sowell?
Love him.
Love him.
Yes.
I wondered if he would be somebody that you said was part of that.
Yes, love
formulation.
Thomas Sowell. Yeah. Thomas Sowell, Ben. There's those are the primary two I would think off the top of my head. Real quick, that's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, all right. I'll hold my breath. Okay, Dan Rather. Before your time, he was the. Do you know who Dan Rather is?
No clue.
Seriously?
No clue.
We should play a game of like what Jeffrey doesn't know because he's so young. Jay, you know Dan Rather, right?
I can't believe he does it.
Right.
Especially since he's so intelligent.
Do you know who Walter Cronkite is?
Nope.
No idea?
Nope.
Tom Brokaw?
Nope.
Peter Jennings?
Nope.
Okay, these were titans of the nightly news back in the day. Okay, so Walter Cronkite's the guy that took his glasses off when JFK is killed. You ever seen the clip? And he looks at the clock and he says, after so-and-so, John F. Kennedy is dead.
Okay.
These guys were titans because back then that's how you got your news, right? Like 6 o'clock, tuned in to the NBC, ABC, CBS broadcast. And then the next generation that inherited it was Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings at ABC, Tom Brokaw was NBC, and Dan Rather was CBS.
Okay.
So for, I'd say, 30 years, Dan Rather was the man who, like, I don't know if he was number one. I think Brokaw was, but a lot of America went to bed listening to, or didn't go to bed, sat down for dinner, and here's what happened in America today.
Okay.
He got fired because he lied about President Trump's service records. He's a big lib. They all are.
Okay.
Right. So he's now mad because Bari Weiss, who founded the Free Press, center-right, is now the editor-in-chief at CBS News.
Okay.
So he says it's a dark day for America. That's his exact quote. And then I got to thinking, and we were like, Dan Rather, what does he report on? Now I want to show you a clip of Dan Rather from, I believe, this is going to be roughly 1978. All right, so listen and watch this.
Concern about rising temperatures on planet Earth heated up a hearing here in Washington today. For years, scientists have theorized about the dangers of the so-called greenhouse effect, the warming of the Earth's atmosphere due to the burning of coal and oil. And in recent months, as David Culhane reports, research has uncovered facts to support that theory.
1982, Jeffrey. He is talking about the green. Look at us sharing that earpiece together. So cute. 1982. He's predicting the climate change existential threat to humanity and to life. We're going to lose the shorelines in Florida. We're going to be underwater. This has been going now for 40 or 50 years, and it's interesting that this is the place of respectability. It's a dark day in America, as Bari Weiss is the new editor-in-chief of CBS News. And he got away with stuff like this. Not only got away with it, they continued to repeat it for the past 40 to 50 years.
What is your question?
That's your thought. You got to be on your game with this guy.
Okay. I mean, here's what I think of initially is more of when he says it's a dark day for America. I mean, the same thing with Democrats talking about when you hear them say it's a threat to our democracy. Again, I always tell people to replace the word democracy with Democrats' political power. When they're saying that it's a threat to our democracy, it's a dark day for our democracy. It's a dark day for Democrats' political power. It's a threat to their political power. That's essentially what it means.
Yeah. And climate change, the reason I wanted to ask you about that and I played it is also, it's just that climate change has been a Trojan horse for almost 40 or 50 years now. It's been a Trojan horse for the accumulation of power. And it's built upon the hubris that man can actually control the thermostat of the earth. I don't doubt that we affect it in some way.
Sure.
But it's full of hubris that we are the ones that are capable of turning up or turning down exactly what happens on this planet. And the fact that they've made these predictions for 40 or 50 years and they've always been wrong reveals the game. That it's about policy and politics as a Trojan horse for power.
I can see that. Actually, I saw something interesting on X today. This is kind of related but off topic. I've been seeing a lot of anti-Israel hate on X, like a lot of it. And someone said the pro-Palestinian cause is a Trojan horse for becoming a leftist. And that made me think. I don't know if it's true yet.
Too.
You did?
Something like that, yes.
And it made me think, is it? Because it could be, right? I'm not sure if it will be. I think time will tell. But I'm seeing a lot of people who are so busy hating Israel that they're running cover for terrorists and helping actually spread terrorist ideology and legitimize it. And I think that's a line we need to be careful of, because, again, I see a lot of people say they're anti-Israel. Okay, you don't like Israel, but don't let your hate for Israel blind you or lead you into supporting terrorism. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to be careful about that, because that also could be a Trojan horse into legitimizing terrorism as a legitimate way of doing things, and that ideology expanding in the U.S., and I think we need to fight against it.
Well, I think two things. I saw the same post, and I think that post was warning against a lot of people on the right.
Yes.
Not the left.
Yes.
On the right, about over-sympathizing, over-championing the cause of Palestinians.
Yes.
That it is a gateway drug.
Yes, because I'm telling you, there's so much anti-Israel hate on the right now. It surprised me on X. I was like, where's this coming from? I think it's coming from Candace. That's probably what drove it. But I'm like, where's this coming from? So I think it's something to pay attention to.
And the other thing about political or terrorism as a legitimate political tool, in the 1970s, that was a thing that was probably, we would have seen it more in our lives than any of us, even me being older than you, but even in my age. But it does seem more popular now than ever. Like, I think in the 70s, you had Carlos the Jackal, and you had Middle Eastern terrorists hijacking planes and that kind of thing. But I don't think your common leftist would have gone, good stuff.
No.
No.
And
right now, it's it's pretty popular.
Yeah, it's concerningly popular.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but that also with the permission structure for violence and leftists seemingly becoming more and more okay with political violence, I don't think those things are, I think they're somewhat combined. I don't think they're separate.
Yeah.
I think they kind of play into each other. But yeah, it's definitely something to be paying attention to.
Last thing, so I want to ask you about this. It's somewhat tied, but this is a crime. So Mark Benioff, who's a billionaire, has contributed to Democrats a ton throughout his career. He has now said, he said this weekend, that he would love to see President Trump send the National Guard into San Francisco. Pretty wild, right? Okay. Contributed Democrats in the past. So you've got two narratives competing against each other in America. You've got those who see President Trump's deployment of the National Guard as the precursor for authoritarian state. Okay. Otherizing brown people, otherizing blue states or blue cities, and some have gone so far as to say gonna circumvent a 2028 election because of the deployment of the National Guard. And then you've got others that live in these cities and live in these conditions and walk through the Tenderloin in San Francisco or live in the south side of Chicago. And they want to see the help of President Trump. And even some of those on the left, at least in the case of Mark Benioff here. And it's kind of interesting. I'm not going to have a pointed question, so don't prepare for a pointed question. It's interesting, though, it seems to me the differentiating factor is those that have bought into the dystopian
propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda, and they believe it. Yeah. Like they think they are living in The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, and they're not. They're not. I mean, it's Trump derangement syndrome at one of its highest levels is what I would say. Like thinking about it, looking at it, they're talking about, okay, we're going to use the National Guard to help cut down on crime. What is the problem? But they've convinced themselves that Trump is so evil, orange, racist, and bad that it can't be for actual crime. It's got to be because he's trying to get stuff ready and have, soldiers at the ballot boxes in 2026 to make sure that Republicans win and this, that, and the other. They just make things up, right? So, yeah, I think it's Trump derangement syndrome, and they've convinced themselves of delusional things. And the problem is that they live in they like echo chambers. They don't like, they say they like diversity, but they hate diversity of thought. For example, when Elon took over X, Elon isn't censoring liberals. He's not doing that. But what they did is they got blue sky and they all ran over to Threads. Threads is a liberal cesspool.
Right.
So because they want their echo chamber. So they sit in their echo chamber and then they just hype themselves up and convince themselves that everything they're saying is right, even though it's delusional.
I saw you. You were on an airplane. You posted your play against Iowa State.
Oh, you saw that?
Oh, yeah, man. I saw it.
Okay.
It was nice.
It was decent.
It was a little hook route. Then you hooked around again the other way. And then it was 2 spins.
Double spin.
Double spin. Yeah. To the house.
Yeah. That's kind of a cool experience. Got back on the plane, and I was actually on ESPN Top 10, and like seeing yourself right behind LeBron was like, that's kind of different. That's kind of different.
All right, man. I'm really glad you're in Dallas. You're going to be on the Will Cain Show a little bit later today. I appreciate you being down here.
Appreciate you.
Jeffrey Mead. All right. When we come back, we're going to hang out with former NFL kicker. He's running for Congress from Arizona. It is Jay Feely coming up on Will Cain Country. This episode, by the way, is brought to you by Prize Picks, where being right actually gets you paid. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right is about football, and it can earn you cash. Don't miss the action this season because on Prize Picks, it's good to be right. I've been playing Prize Picks lately, and I don't know why I wasted so long not playing Prize Picks. It's simple, it's fun, and honestly, the easiest way to add a little more excitement to your football weekend. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less per player projections. 2 or more players, get your picks right, you win. This week, I'm watching a few games. Interestingly, Saquon Barkley, more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. It's been rough for Saquon lately, so you want to hear what I'm going to say? Less. Patrick Mahomes, more or less than 2.5 passing touchdowns. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mahomes is back, baby. He's pretty hot. I go more. Josh Allen, more or less than 270 passing yards. More, always more with Josh Allen. And check this out. Prize Pick now lets you stack a player. That means if you think Josh Allen's going off, you can pick him for passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. So all on Josh Allen, only on Prize Picks. Here's something that I really like. The injury reboot. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and they don't return, it doesn't hurt you or work against you. That's the kind of fairness you don't get anywhere else. You can replace a player or you don't lose on the more or less if he goes out in the first half. And when it comes to money, Prize Picks makes it easy. All deposits are withdrawn fast and secure. They work with Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more. Download the Prize Pick app today and use the code WillCain to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineups. That's code WILLCAIN for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
All the time. And I didn't know right away that.
Oh, you did, yeah.
I didn't know his name. I just loved his videos. And so I ran back there. I'm like, is that the same guy? And pulled up a text. I'm like, oh, yeah, it is.
Jay Feely hanging out with us here on Will Cain Country, which you get every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. But you can follow us on Spotify and on Apple. Jay was just hanging out. They were on together. And then you said you didn't realize when you were talking to him who it was.
First of all, I didn't know that he was a football player. I had no idea. I just loved his videos and the way he articulates his beliefs and how thoughtful, non-emotive that he is. And so I love sending those videos out to different family, friends who I know, like I've had conversations. Hey, here's a different thought coming from a different perspective, you know, and they've been super effective in getting people to think about issues. So
yeah.
He does a great job.
Yeah, no, Jeffrey's really done a great job, which we just had Jeffrey Mead here on the show. Check him out. It's on TikTok, on Instagram, X, everywhere, all his stuff. Okay, let's start here. So, Jay, 14 years in the NFL, very, very successful kicking career. post-career, you've been broadcasting.
10 years.
10 years broadcasting.
Right into broadcasting.
Yeah. So why do you want to run for Congress?
My wife asks me that question all the time. No, she's actually been, very supportive and kind of pushing me. For the last 3 years during broadcasting, she would ask me, hey, is this God's plan for you? Is this his desire for your life? And to be honest, I would get kind of frustrated with her. I'm like, I love what I'm doing. Like, it's fun to do this broadcasting job. I only have to do it for 5 months of the year. I get 7 months off completely. Pays really well, and I love doing it. So stop asking me that. But, when President Trump got shot, that was the day that I really started thinking about doing something different. And if he was willing to continue to fight for our country and put himself in jeopardy, and willingly put himself in jeopardy when he doesn't have to do it. He's already been president. He's a billionaire. Like, he can go off and live his life and not worry about anything. I started just asking myself that, like, what am I willing to sacrifice? And am I doing something that God wants me to do, or am I just doing what I selfishly want to do? And, I got to the point where I'm like, no, I need to do something with more meaning that has greater impact. And I'm idealist. I don't know that I can have the impact that I think I can have when it comes to politics, but now so more than ever after Charlie Kirk was shot and killed, and that was a heartbreaking moment for my wife and I and so many around the country. We need more people in political office that are willing to have those hard conversations, that can communicate effectively, especially on the conservative side. I think so often we have the right policies and the right beliefs. We don't often have the right messenger, and we need more people that can communicate and do it effectively.
All right, so you're running as a Republican. Andy Bigg's current seat. Andy's running for governor of Arizona. So do you ever think about the fact, like, congressional approval rating is what? Is it below 20% now? I think it is.
It's pretty low.
Yeah, and part of that is because it is so difficult to get things done.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I think that game is a little rigged. Like, the Constitution itself is designed to make it hard to get things done. Like, legislation and the growth of government and government's involvement in different aspects.
The growth of government? Well, they found a way to get around that.
They did find that,
they?
yeah. But it should be hard to make new laws. It should be hard to integrate the government into your life more and more. So, in a way, the bug is part of the feature of the system. But it is dysfunctional, and, the public knows it. So you've been involved in functional environments for much of your career when it comes to team sports in the NFL. You laugh at that. Maybe not always.
Sometimes functional. I can tell you a lot of stories about dysfunction as well. But, we need people who are going to go into office who have been successful already in their lives that don't need political office. We have so many self-serving congressmen and women who go in there, stay in there. All they care about is getting reelected. They grow their net worth. They grow power. They accumulate, and they do it for themselves. They don't do it for this country. They don't do it for their constituents. And when I looked at, the path, starting with BLM and, how I thought destructive that was to our country, the fabric of our country, and how hypocritical it was when, we're going to shut down individual businesses and say you can't make money and you might go bankrupt as a result, but we're going to allow BLM riots to take place and go and destroy those actual businesses as well. And then you fast forward to all the stuff going on with the transgender movement, how, disgusting that is, and men playing in women's sports. And then for me, coming from the economical side, when I look at our debt and the fact that we're at 37 trillion growing at $1 trillion every 100 days, that our interest on our debt alone is over $1 trillion a year. It's more than our defense budget. And no one has the willingness to take that on. I just think we need more people that are going there for the right reasons and that don't care if they succeed long term. Like, my goal is not to go there and for it to be a career. My goal is to go there and have an impact and effectuate change.
You laughed when I said functional, and you've had, I guess, dysfunctional and functional environments in the NFL. So what's the difference?
Leadership and a willingness to put something, be committed to something greater than yourselves. The most dysfunctional environments I was in were all selfish. When I look at Democrat Party and those policies, they're very selfish, and they don't talk about the greater good for everyone.
Well, that's the opposite of what they would say about themselves. They would say they're the empathetic party, the empathetic mindset, and that Republicans are the ones looking out for themselves.
But when you look at the actual policies and the things that they try to do, you were just talking to Jeffrey, about the virtual signaling and, the victim mentality. That does not help people. That doesn't help. You look at the black family and the way that it's been destroyed over the last, 70, 80 years since the civil rights movement. It hasn't helped them to create a victim mentality and to have them dependent on government. What helps them is to create those equal opportunities and those pathways to success. The problem is you can't control outcomes, so you can't control natural equity.
So players that were selfish and a coach that didn't have leadership?
That's exactly right. And as we're talking about, I'm thinking about those exact teams. You know, we went.
Which ones were
we
they?
went 1-15 in Miami. We had a lot of talent on that team. You know, we didn't win close games early, and then it totally fell apart. You know, because guys were selfish and they weren't focused on the greater good. And you know, there's just so many examples for me of that, and I think you see it in all walks of life. There's businesses that you see the exact same thing. Guy comes in, he's the CEO. He doesn't do a good job. You know, he creates a hostile atmosphere, and nobody wants to work for him. And, you know, I think when we look at government, what is government's role? It's to create economic pathways for everyone to success. It shouldn't be about, you know, whether somebody who's really rich and a billionaire succeeds. That doesn't ever bother me. I look at something, I'm like, great, good for you. But I want to make sure that we have those pathways for everyone to succeed. And, you know, and
what is it about pro athletes in politics these days? I mean, there's you. Mark Teixeira's running for Congress. Last week I had Derek Dooley, who was the head coach.
Tommy Tuberville. Derek
Dooley's running for Senate in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Why so many athletes interested in politics?
I think what we're saying, you know, when we look at committing yourself to a greater good, first, you know, all four of us have been very blessed with athletics. And I think if you have the right mindset, you believe that with those blessings, you know, comes an obligation to try to utilize it to help other people. And that's my wife and I. Like, our heart has always been a heart of service. We've tried to engage in our community, have an impact on people, and try to help people. And I think that's natural to go from, if you had success in sports, probably that's your mentality, because you do have to have a team first mentality, and you do have to have good leadership. And so it's natural to say, I'm going to use those blessings and try to get into government and try to help fix it and be part of the solution, and not just sit on the sidelines. Because it'd be very easy for my wife and I to just say, you know what, I don't want to get involved in politics. We'll go up, we'll stay at our lake house 4 months of the year when it's hot in Arizona, and we'll just love our life and enjoy our grandkids, and we could do that. You know, but I just feel like this time and this season in life for us is about trying to have a positive impact and try to leave this country better for my grandkids rather than just sitting selfishly and enjoying them.
Okay, I want to ask you about a couple of things in the news cycle, but first, let's take a minute and talk about kicking. Do you like the new kickoffs?
Well, by the way, your son's 6'5". Why is he just, you know, there's really more punting than kicking.
He does
that
both.
Body type. Yeah,
oh, really?
He does both. Oh, for sure. It's much harder to be a kicker when you're taller. There's not many kickers that are really tall.
Is that because of you've got to repeat the same motion over and over, and it's harder
exactly
when it's longer?
Think about like golfers too. You don't see a lot of 6'7", 6'8" golfers that are really good.
Right.
You know, you got guys that are 6 foot like Rory McIlroy. You know, and that size because you can control it better. And the same thing with kicking.
But height can help punting.
Yeah, the leverage, absolutely, because you're bringing that leg up. You want to generate as much power as possible.
Right.
Punting's also easier because you don't have to deal with missing a game-winning kick. You know, you hit 3 good ones, you have 1 bad one. Okay, you had a good game. It doesn't hold true for kicking.
What's the economics? Are punters making less than kickers?
Yeah, they do a little, but not much.
So it's not worth. So
it's not worth it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, let's go to this. What do you make of these guys kicking these 65-yarders?
It's unbelievable.
Your career long 61. Do I have it right?
That was right.
61.
But they're doing it in the first quarter of games. You know, I mean, Brandon Aubrey's just unbelievable. And he didn't even grow up doing it. I was playing golf with a few kickers. There was a foursome of all NFL kickers. I think we had like 6,000 points between us. And the 4 of us were amazed at how good they are now. We're like, thank goodness we played when we did, because we get fired now.
Is it really that they've gotten better? Because I read the balls are different, right? They can.
I don't buy that near as much because we paid our ball boys to go in there and to develop them and rub them in and make sure that they were really good. You know, so when I ended kicking, the balls were pretty good. I don't think that has an impact as much as I do. You can now go at 10 years old and get the right training. When I was growing up, there was none. I didn't.
That's not Brandon Aubrey's story.
No, that's not. That's why he's such a unicorn and so special, and I'm just so blown away watching him.
Yeah. So I don't know what the long is now. Like, I'm a Cowboy fan, so I watch him in particular. But sometimes when they're on the 45, their own 45, the wrong side of the field, I'm like, let him try. I don't know what's too long for him.
Somebody will make a 70-yarder for sure. There's no doubt about that. And then continuing to push it back. I mean, it's pretty spectacular.
That's going to put punters out of business.
That's right. Because then you just, as long as you're not backed up, I mean, it's just, it's special to see what they're doing because I know how hard it is and how easy they make it look.
So what about the kickoffs? So the new kickoff rule, do you like this?
I was not a fan of it just from looking at it. I didn't like the way, the pause. But it did accomplish what the NFL was trying to accomplish, which was to reduce injuries, in particular, the concussions on kickoff, and it kept the kickoff in the game. And that was the question was, do they just eliminate kickoffs and start at the 25 and give the offense the ball? So because they kept the kickoff in the game, I was a fan of it. Now, the rule this year is much better. You're seeing a lot more returns because they moved it up 5 yards, and now there's an incentive, to not kick touchbacks and to make guys return the ball, and you're seeing that, which that's
the dirty
really
kick.
exciting.
I think it's getting exciting. The new thing with the dirty kick, it's bounce it, see if they fumble the ball. Now it's kind of exciting.
I was a guy who loved to go down there and hit. So like I would have enjoyed this. Like that was my fun. Kicking was my job. I had to go out there and make field goals. That was going to determine whether or not I stayed on the team and stayed employed. But going down there and hitting somebody, especially when they didn't block me, like that was a lot of fun.
Okay, 2 more questions on this. What's your favorite year of your career?
Well, my senior year at Michigan, we won the national championship, and I met my wife at the beginning of that season, so it was a pretty magical season. But my favorite year was actually 2005, and I was with the Giants, and it was the worst moment of my career. I missed 3 game-winning kicks at the end of a game, 1 at the end of the game, 2 in overtime for the Giants. Saturday Night Live does a spoof about me called the Jay Feely Story, The Long Ride Home. It's like 4 minutes of Dane Cook playing me, what it was like to ride back on the plane from Seattle back to New York. And they're just crushing me in New York all week. And then, we go to Philadelphia. I get another game winner in overtime at Philadelphia. I know if I miss this kick, my career is probably going to be over. The night before the game was the Saturday Night Live clip, and so you have to discipline yourself to not allow your mind to wander in those moments. And I was able to make the kick. And for me, I was such a better kicker after that. Like before that, those misses in the Saturday Night Live clip, I was just an average kicker in the NFL, just good enough not to get fired. After that game, I was one of the better kickers in the NFL the next 9 years. And I didn't miss another game winner the next 9 years. And I think it was because I failed as bad as I could fail, and it didn't break me. And that allowed me to go out there and have a lot more fun and to not fear failure so much.
It's such a mental thing. Yeah. You said this to me when we were out there before we came on air, and it seems obvious. I mean, there are guys who, and you brought up Blair Walsh. There's a couple of Cowboys kickers that seemed like absolutely the best in the league, and the next thing you know, they're gone. I don't see them anymore.
Closers in baseball, same thing. You see that sometimes. Remember Mitch Williams gives up the home runs. He's one of the best closers in the league. And sometimes those critical failures, sometimes, you can't overcome them. For me, it freed me to go have more fun and to enjoy myself. And, I was like a 12-year-old kid let go on the, in warm-ups. I was catching punts and running pat and goes and just having a great time. And I played better because of that. But it holds true in our life, too. It holds true in broadcasting. If you're afraid of failing, you're going on air, you're not going to be near as good. You're going to be too careful, and you're not going to just be yourself. And so it helped me certainly in broadcasting, and it holds true in business. So many people get to the cusp of their dreams, and then they pull back because they're afraid of failing and what might happen if they fail. So they never really risk failure, so they never achieve greatness.
Do you ever see that movie For Love of the Game, Kevin Costner?
Yeah, I love that game.
Okay,
so I love that movie.
He goes on the mound and he says, "Clear the mechanism," right?
Exactly.
And all of a sudden the crowd goes away and everything disappears but the strike zone. Yeah. What would you do? You go out there, they're going to ice you. Maybe they're not going to ice you. Like, how do you put it all out of your mind?
So me, it was occupying your mind so it couldn't wander, because your mind wants to think about all the implications of what you're doing. Like, if I miss this kick, I'm going to get fired. We're going to have to pull the kids out of school. We're going to have to sell the home. Those are all real things, but you can't let your mind think about those, or even the positive. If I make this kick, I may make the Pro Bowl, and then I'm going to get a new contract, and you have to focus. For me, I just focused on the fundamentals, and I kind of repeated them to myself. Head down, lock my ankle, follow through. And I would repeat that over and over. And so it was tangible things that was going to help me succeed in the moment, but it was not allowing my mind to think about all the implications that I didn't want it to think about as well.
Sounds like golf. Head down.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you're running for office in Arizona. Let's talk about what's going on. So first of all, the government is shut down as we speak. Jake Tapper had a moment of clarity and honesty this weekend when he had a Democratic politician on, and he pointed out every way we've ever covered a government shutdown in the past would point the blame at you Democrats. Watch Jake Tapper.
So you're blaming the Republicans for the shutdown, but in point of fact, it's the Democrats in the Senate who are refusing to vote for the clean continuing resolution to fund the government for 7 weeks. I mean, that just just as a point of fact, the way that we have always covered shutdowns is that the party that is not voting for the CR, the continuing resolution to fund the government, is the party that is blocking the government funding and is responsible for the shutdown. That's how we did it the last time in 2018, 2019. That's the time we did before that during the.
All right, he pointed out that every time we've done this in the past, 2017, 2018, the party not funding the continuing resolution, a clean CR, is the one we blame. That's you, Democrats.
Yeah, and they know it, but they're going to lie to the American people, and they're going to try to leverage the American people to get things that they couldn't get passed in the one big beautiful bill because they lost, the presidency, they lost the Senate, and they lost the House. And they did the same thing for 4 years when President Biden was in office with the border. They kept telling the American people, we can't do anything about illegal immigration until we pass a bill. The reality was they just didn't have the desire and the will to protect the American people. And I think about families that lost somebody to fentanyl and the 100,000 or so deaths we had a year, people who lost family members or had family members raped by illegal, and the willingness of Democrats to put politics in front of the protection of American people. You see it again now with this bill, and the hypocrisy that exists in the party, has no end, and they continue to put their own politics and their desires for power in front of the American people. And I think it's evident, if you look at it and you see it.
All right, another big race that everybody's looking at is Governor of Virginia and Attorney General of Virginia. Jay Jones, who's running for Attorney General, is the man who's fantasized about shooting his political opponent and the death of his opponent's children. Winsome Sears, who is running for governor as a Republican, is running against Abigail Spanberger. They just had a debate, and she pressed Spanberger on her unwillingness to pull her endorsement from Jay Jones. And now she's running an ad that seems to be devastating. Watch.
Would it take him pulling the trigger? Is that what would do it? And then you would say he needs to get out of the race? Abigail, you have nothing to say? Abigail, what if he said it about your 3 children? Is that when you would say he should get out of the race, Abigail? You're running to be governor.
Miss Earl Sears.
I mean, we're talking about murder. We're talking about someone's life being taken from them. Have you nothing to say about that?
It is pretty devastating ad. Spanberger's unwillingness to make eye contact with Earl Sears and a little smile in the corner of her mouth the entire time she's being questioned on this. It seems like a pretty basic level thing.
Why is it hard to say, no, that's abhorrent, and no one should say that, even in private text messages? And no, he shouldn't be in the highest office in that state as the AG. And because of partisan politics, the unwillingness to say it, especially when we think about Charlie Kirk being murdered, and you think about all the things that led up to that, and you think about President Trump and the 2 assassination plots, attempts at his life to try to kill him and how close he was to being murdered as well, because of the rhetoric of the left, because they're saying he's Hitler and they're the Gestapo, ISIS, and we saw an attempt on ICE agents as well. And it's disgusting to me that, again, Democrats are unwilling to put the protection of Americans at the forefront of their beliefs instead of politics. But that's what they do. And, this whole thing on illegal immigration and ICE, I was having a conversation, Will, a few weeks ago with some former NBA players, and I listened for like 10 minutes as they railed against President Trump and ICE and what they were doing. And then I said, how many of you guys voted for Barack Obama? And every one of them did. I said, how many of you were against Barack Obama's immigration policies? And not one of them was. I said, do you know that they're very similar to President Trump's? He deported over 3 million illegal aliens, 60% of which without due process. And over 60% were not criminals. And you look at the numbers with President Trump, I think he's deported about 400,000, and he has deported more criminals than Barack Obama did, and he's given more due process than Barack Obama did. And so the argument that he's doing something that now is illegal and that it's abhorrent, it doesn't hold water. It's completely hypocritical, because no one on the left said anything about Barack Obama when he was president. They didn't say he was racist. They didn't say that ICE was a Gestapo. They allowed him to do what he wanted to do. And he talked about it often, how it was so important for this country and the success of this country, and why borders were important and why you had to go about it the legal way. But no one on the left had a problem with Barack Obama. But because it's President Trump, they do.
All right, running for Congress from Arizona. Where can people find out more information?
jfeelyforcongress.com. Go on there. We're all over the valley. The response has been amazing so far. And, I'm having a lot of fun having those conversations. And I think you have to have a willingness to have those hard conversations and talk to people, even people who disagree with you.
Sure, of course. Best of luck, Jay.
Thanks,
He's going to
Will.
hang out. He's going to be on the Will Cain Show a little bit later on the Fox News channel. That's going to do it for us today here on Will Cain Country. We'll be back tomorrow. Again, same time, same place. Check us out, Will Cain Country, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. We'll see you again next time.